Hi, everyone. I'm Shelley Lyle.
And I'm Brian Avery.
And welcome to Voices from the Field, a podcast brought to you by the Department of Sport Management at the University of Florida. This podcast was created to share the career journeys of sport industry professionals. Our hope is that you learn the ins and outs of sport industry professions. We're excited to be with all of you this week and with our special guest, Taylor Wells Maberry. Taylor is the Senior Coordinator of Player Engagement for Major League Soccer.
Taylor received her bachelor's from Concordia University, Irvine, and her master's of business administration from La Sierra University. She is currently working on her law degree as an evening student at Fordham Law School. Her work experience includes PR for the LA Clippers, client service in baking, and global outreach work in the nonprofit sector. Taylor has worked for Major League Soccer for over 3 years, most recently as the Senior Coordinator of Player Engagement, and previously as an Executive Assistant to Deputy Commissioner of MLS.
Welcome, Taylor. We're so glad to have you today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. This is great.
Yeah. So we really want to hear about your career journey. You can start, when you started college, and then just share with us a little bit about how you got to where you are and when you knew player engagement was kind of your sweet spot.
Yeah, well, as you just heard, Brian, thanks for sharing that little bio. My career journey has included a few industries, from banking to the nonprofit space. But I grew up a huge sports fan, and I learned after my internship with the Clippers, my freshman year of college, that the business of sport was my one true love professionally. But where it was for school, both undergraduate and graduate, it lent itself to other opportunities outside of sport. But it's cool that I can look back now and realize how well those jobs prepared me for what is now my career in sport. For example, when I worked at a bank in college, I learned the importance of customer service, of effective communication, managing personalities, managing expectations. And in my nonprofit work, I got to travel around the world where I learned about cultural literacy, globalization, the area of sport for development, which I love, and really the power of sport to affect culture and bring positive change. So when the opportunity arose to work in player engagement for Major League Soccer, it seemed like a natural coalescence of everything I'd worked toward and experienced. Just like with banking clients, I assess and meet player needs now. Just like with my international work, I still, navigate cultural differences. And to be honest, that's one of the main reasons I love MLS, the diversity of our player population. But it's so cool to look back and see how all of that led me to this role I'm in now with player engagement at Major League Soccer.
Yeah, I love how you're able to weave all of the positions and what you learned from those previously into what you're presently doing. I'd like to be able to reflect that from time to time, but I don't know if I have that kind of time to commit at this point. Things are happening so fast, if you get where I'm coming from. So that reflection's nice. I like that. And we should all take a time or a moment to do more of that.
And so can you define player engagement? What does that mean in the MLS? Just get a little clarity, because I think it's player development, player. It could be, engagement can be different. And then also, they have athlete development. So if you could just clarify, that'd be awesome.
For sure. There's so many terms. Is it player development, player engagement, player relations? What in the heck do we do? But player engagement at Major League Soccer exists to come alongside players and former players and our academy players to support them primarily in times of transition, but also just throughout their life cycle as a player and beyond. We exist to foster holistic health of mind, body, and spirit, to help them with their education, with important things like financial literacy, and so much more. We're just basically there to ensure that they become the best person that they can be, that they achieve their definition of success off the field.
Awesome. That's super helpful. And it is funny because you look at different rosters on different teams and leagues and you're like, I'm not sure I know exactly what that means. So with that being said, can you share your daily duties, responsibilities, kind of your roles for Major League Soccer?
You probably get the same answer from everyone who works in sport, that no 2 days are the same, that every day is different. And same story here. I mean, for us, Major League Soccer's player engagement department is relatively new. We kind of kicked off in mid-2018. And of course, 2020 was a little bit of a weird one. So we're kind of 2.5 years old in effect. And anyone who's been involved in a startup knows that you get to be involved in a lot of aspects of building the project and making it run. So for us, that involves casting vision for what player engagement should look like, building and executing programs and resources, as well as doing the administrative work, to my favorite part is actually getting on the phone or getting on Zoom, getting on WhatsApp, and actually advising players one-on-one with whatever it is that they're looking to do or looking to learn.
Okay, and do players reach out to you directly, or are you over all the teams or specific teams? How does that work for your department?
Yeah, it's a little bit different with Major League Soccer than it is for other major men's sports leagues that I've heard of in terms of their player engagement departments. But for Major League Soccer, since it is so new, not every club yet has a player engagement designated person or designated department. So us at the league office, even though that we are one step removed from the players, since most of the players don't live in our state, we kind of do a both and situation where we build the big vision, big programs, and we also do some one-on-one advising with players. And we also bring in consultants and other resources to do that consulting or that advising as well. So it's a little bit of both. And we also work very closely with a point person at every club who distributes and disseminates some of our programmatic materials. So again, it's kind of ad hoc in some senses, but we are beginning to streamline our distribution of resources and materials as more clubs are getting player engagement representatives at the club level.
Taylor, you said that you're working, holistic perspective and assisting in player engagement across the board. Are you finding it difficult considering the number of players to manage all of that? Or is there a process in place, at the team levels as well to kind of assist in certain regards? Or how does that work?
We, of course, have to make sure that all of our programs and resources and materials are scalable, because we have over 800 current soccer players playing in Major League Soccer. Thinking about, we have expansion clubs, we have Austin FC coming on this season. And then we have, every player who's ever played in Major League Soccer. It numbers over probably 3,000 at this point. So, how do we bring them back into the fold, make sure that they have what they need, make sure they feel like they're a part of the Major League Soccer family? And that's not even to mention MLS Next, our development academy system, which has, again, thousands and thousands of young kids. So we just try to make sure that all of our programs are scalable to where they do have impact on the one-on-one level. Like when I get on the phone and talk to a player and, hey, have you done this? Have you done this? Did you do that? What do you think of this program? As well as here's this email or this PDF or this video or whatever it might be, to where players who are really interested in the subject matter can benefit from it without us having to have a touch point with them.
Okay. No, it's a good perspective. Thank you for filling in the blanks there for me. So as a senior coordinator for player engagement and development, and or just in your career in general, how do you think you've evolved as a leader, an innovator, or person? And how, you're talking about scalable, how are you getting creative to ensure you're continuing to touch base with these individuals and your players on a reoccurring basis to make sure their needs are met?
I think that's exactly it. It's just getting creative. It's just getting creative. And one of my favorite aspects of my job is that it's incredibly relational. It's relationship based, where it has to do with who you know and who they know, and it just keeps growing organically from there. Player engagement launched what we're calling the MLS Greats Network. We call our former players MLS Greats because they're great. We love them and appreciate them. And they've contributed so much to the game of soccer in North America. So we launched that, and we did so entirely organically through word of mouth. We didn't go with the whole fanfare of here's the press release and launch video and come to the launch party and all that kind of stuff. We launched it very relationally, and that was intentionally because we wanted people to know that it was their organization. It was their alumni group, not ours. It's not about, yay, Major League Soccer flying our Major League Soccer flag. It's about them. And so the fact that it started out so relational has created a really incredible community of MLS greats, former players, who then pour into our current player population. For example, we have a rookie symposium every year, and we bring in probably over a dozen MLS greats who serve as facilitators, mentors, panelists, speakers, just there if rookies have questions. And that's been really, really cool to cultivate that community. So that relational aspect is all of it. That's all of it.
No, it sounds like a heck of a network that you're creating and a support structure in order to ensure that, their needs are being met at every level. We try to do that here at the university level, obviously with our students. So it's great to see that it's being done at a professional level, especially at the sports in a sports organization. So that's great. So at the beginning of your career, if there's one thing that you wish you would have known that would have made a huge difference in the trajectory of it, or just the learning curve was shorter as a result, what would that be?
The learning curve. That's a great question. I think what I wish I would have known at the beginning, and people said it, but I don't think I internalized it, was the importance of relationships in the professional world. I know I just went off about, everything is relational, but it is. Yeah. And that includes, of course, the formal networking of the LinkedIn connection and the follow-up email, and all of that is so important in the business world. But it also comes down to the simple truth that people want to be around and work with and hire people that they like and that they trust. But prior to understanding that, I always believed that the business world was like school. If you put your head down and grind and excel and achieve, you'll get the good grade, you'll get the opportunities. And in a blind meritocracy with scantrons and anonymity, like, yes, all day. But not only is this an industry run by humans, it's also a very competitive industry with hundreds or thousands of applications per job listing, and it's a competition. But those of us who like sport aren't afraid of a little competition. So to me, I've learned the importance of cultivating a community of what I call good people. I always say overvalue good people, and doing what I advise my players to do all the time. And that is be a good dude. If we all just be a good dude or be a good person, to be, of course, gender neutral, a lot falls into place.
Yeah. Is it considering the number and scale of players that you're contending with, is it difficult? Because you had said trust to build those relationships. What's the time frame that it takes sometimes in order to develop that trust and ensure that, from a player engagement perspective, that things are in alignment with the organization and the goals of the organization?
Yeah, it definitely does take time. And we knew that we as player engagement, led by my boss, Dr. Jamil Northcutt, we knew that at the beginning, because before we jumped in and launched anything, we asked the questions. We asked former players, what could Major League Soccer do what could we do to support you now? Yeah. What could we have done when you were transitioning into the league, when you were a veteran player, when you were transitioning out of the league, and now? And we listened to them, and they told us, like, hey, that fanfare thing, that big splash, sending us all merch, like all that kind of stuff, like that's not necessarily going to land. It might make a big splash where you get hundreds of players who come to this thing at the beginning, but no one's really going to buy in. What we need you to do, Major League Soccer, is come at this relationally. And so we did. And we knew that it would be slower growing. It would be a lot of phone calls and text messages, a lot of handwritten invitations to things. But with that comes them really taking ownership of this group and making it their own, and them being ambassadors, them evangelizing the message of, like, no, this is actually really cool. Like, this is actually really cool. You should be a part of it. And so it's slower, but in the end, quality over quantity, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's exactly a direct parallel.
No, it absolutely does. I think that it's important to understand that these things are building blocks, obviously, and they take time. And I think once you get buy-in at some level or another, it just kind of perpetuates that buy-in. So I sense that's kind of what you guys have achieved.
Exactly.
Excellent. Amazing.
Yeah, I think it's really, really cool. Just another reminder how relational sports are, right? Mm-hmm. So I think players who are on teams know that because they're with the team. And then, we're always talking about networking and getting to know people, whether that's business or sports specific. But yeah, how it just sounds like there's a lot of depth there now in the programs you've built, not just like the show, which sports can also be very much a part of. But I think it's awesome that you've been able to like do a lot of deep groundwork there for the industry. So very cool. So can you tell us the best resources that have helped you along the way in your career journey?
Oh my gosh, mentorship, which can be as simple as asking questions. It doesn't have to be someone who's your go-to mentor all the time. It's just like, hey, I noticed that you did this thing. Tell me about that thing. And maybe you never talk to them again, but they just kind of pushed you in one direction or helped out with some perspective. But I mean, me personally, I'm very grateful to have been blessed with the best mentors. And those came about from, networking events, conferences, and a good old fashioned, hey, can I ask you a couple career development questions one of these days? And you kind of get in their office for 15 minutes and they end up kind of becoming a mentor long-term. So that's been really great to have those opportunities. But other resources besides mentors are, this sounds so silly, but Google and LinkedIn. Really, if you're not sure how to write that tricky email, or you're not sure how much this job pays, or where that person that you're going to meet with worked before this, like, the internet knows all, and information is priceless. I like to be very well prepared when I can. That's
awesome and helpful. I think it's always important to know who you're talking to and how they got to where they are, just to ask more questions or, good questions. So speaking of people, who are 3 people who have been the most influential to you in your career? It could be your specific industry now, it could be, the whole trajectory of your industry, and why?
3 people, I have to narrow it down.
Or you can actually, you know what? I'm not even going to put you to box. You just tell me who comes to mind and go from there.
Okay. I have 3 categories of people.
Okay, perfect.
I can't give a simple answer.
No worries.
I'm thinking as for people who very tangibly helped me get to this point from the jump, obviously my parents, and I'm counting them as one person, one of these 3. Since I was little, they're educators. They really cultivated a desire and a love for learning, a curiosity. They also taught me to work hard. They taught me the importance of perseverance and facing challenges and obstacles head on, as well as the importance of advocacy for myself and for others. And I'm very, very grateful for that and for them. Another category I think of is people who inspire me, people that I, heroes, if you would call them that, but I call them change makers. For example, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Rep. John Lewis comes to mind, or Kobe Bryant, of course, belongs on that list. And I'm absolutely devastated that the latter 3, we lost them all last year. That is very sad. But they were on my list even prior to their passing, but I'm grateful to learn from their examples. And then the third category, what came to mind was a moment of influence, a person. Okay, I mentioned this on my Instagram a few weeks ago, but it's something that is really, really impactful in my journey. I went on a trip to Iraq in 2017 as part of my job for the nonprofit that I worked for. And I met a young Kurdish man. I wish I could remember his name. I don't even remember his name. But he saw some of my female friends and me playing pickup soccer one evening. And it was not culturally common for women to play soccer, but we were told by some locals that it was okay. And he was absolutely blown away. And he was not even in a judgmental way, just this occurs. This is a thing. And he asked me afterwards in a whisper, he was like, if women can play soccer, what else can women do? And that just brought it all home for me.
Wow.
What else can women do? It was this light bulb, this moment of understanding for him that just happened solely because he watched us kick a ball around and laugh a little. This to me, this shows the power of sport. Mm-hmm. It unlocks moments like that. And that man influenced me and inspired me more than he will ever know. And I can only hope that he could say the same about that moment and that he brings that to his life and his sphere of influence. So those are my three people.
Those are awesome. I'm glad you shared.
So much good stuff. Oh, yeah. People have been so good to me.
Very cool.
So for students or those considering a career in player development or engagement along those lines, is there a specific pathway that you could think that it could lead to a role like yours in the future that they could take themselves?
I'm asked this a lot by young professionals or students who come to me for mentorship or informational interviews, and I have yet to see a single pathway in this space. Yeah, and it might be because it's a relatively new space or an emerging space, an evolving space. But I think the advice that I would give them, or that I do give to people that ask me this question, is just ask around. Okay. Ask people in the field to mentor and guide you. Ask them what they did, what they wish they would have done, and see what people in the field majored in, LinkedIn, what events they go to, where they learn. And as the students or young professionals learn and hear more, I believe themes and patterns will begin to emerge. And I think that kind of lights up the path forward. I know that's not very tangible, but that's the best I have from my perspective.
No, I respect that too. Do you see it in a growth mode in any capacity moving forward?
For sure, I do. Yeah. There are plenty of organizations that are popping up that do focus on what's called athlete development, the field of athlete development. We're understanding that athletes are not just foosball players, they're football players. They aren't just bodies out there to make money for their organization. They are people, and it's a holistic thing where if we take care of our people, our employees as employers, that they will perform better at their job, we can bring that to sport too. And not only because we want them to perform better at their job, but because they are people and, we care about people.
No, it's great. Considering your role as in player engagement in the top-down approach that the MLS is kind of implemented, did you look at other organizations to kind of mimic it, or did you just kind of build it from scratch and say, this is what we envision moving forward, and this is the model we will, promulgate, if you will, for others to mimic? Yeah.
I think it's a both and in that situation, Brian. My boss, Dr. Jamil Northcutt, he is the vice president of player engagement in Major League Soccer and the real vision caster behind player engagement as it stands. And he has an extensive history working for different sporting organizations, both collegiate and professional. And he has brought a lot of those perspectives and experiences to the table at Major League Soccer. And of course, we have had to adjust even that wide, vast array of experiences for Major League Soccer, because our league is in such a unique place in the sports landscape. And which is one of my favorite things about Major League Soccer is that we are the global game Americanized. Yeah. We have players who are 16 years old and players who are mid-30s. And it's just a lot of different needs, a lot of different questions that get asked. I remember the first rookie symposium that I was a part of. There was the financial literacy session, and one player raised his hand and said something like, how can I diversify my stock portfolio to maximize my whatever the heck? And some other guy raised his hand and said, what's a savings account? And these are people who were like 2 years age difference, thinking about the vast difference between a 16-year-old and a 34-year-old. There are so many questions in between. So we have to create programs that address all of those, whereas many other leagues have a little bit of a little less of a gap in knowledge or life experience. So we've had to do a lot of adjusting, in addition to cultural differences. We have players from over 40 countries, languages spoken. We have to distribute all of our materials in Spanish and French because we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to learn from them as well. So a lot of adaptation goes into it.
Yeah, until you said that, I never even considered all those factors. I mean, that's a wide gap, demographics and everything in between that you have to address in some capacity. So I can imagine it's a lot of work. So rather you than me in that regard. So that's awesome what you're doing. Great.
Grateful to be able to do it. It's fun.
Definitely.
And what's unique to I know you might say relational, but outside of relational, your role, right? Because there's the front office and there's the team roles as coaches, assistant coaches, et cetera. As a player engagement person, what would you say are some of the qualities that role requires, or you're really encouraged to have, that don't fit those other boxes? I think because it's a new field, I try and help students navigate the in-between.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think, I'm just going to list some adjectives that come to mind that really, really do help, I think, with our space. Entrepreneurial, self-starter is important, especially in Major League Soccer where it is so new. I think of resourceful, relational, creative, the ability to see a vision, cast a vision, and then bring it to fruition. There's some people who can do one or the other, and that's important to have both on a team. But if one is able to kind of be a part of that process, especially if it is kind of a startup like our department is, I think that's really important, especially because a lot of these player engagement departments, or whatever they're called at other organizations, are relatively small. You got to kind of do it all, which is half the fun, but it also is a challenge.
That's super helpful. Actually, I love that you gave adjectives. So when students are listening, it's like, oh, I'm this and I'm that, or like I need to work on those areas, because I think sometimes it is just qualities and traits that you need to be honed in on to grow in, or to really just kind of innately have some of those to be a good fit. And so what is going back to a little bit of your story, what has transitioning into different roles been like for you? And what are important things students should consider when changing career fields or roles?
For me personally, I enjoy transition. It feels like a challenge. And I live for a learning opportunity. And I love that, as I mentioned at the very beginning, that I can take what I learned from a bank job, which sounds, okay, not a bank job, but working at a bank, that I can take those skills to working in sport, or, but one thing that I've learned, and I'm grateful to know now, is that your role can change, but you stay you. Like always bring you to the table.
Hmm.
And as you pick up new skills and new experiences in one role, bring them to the next. That's the beauty of team. And that's the beauty of diversity, that we all have different backgrounds and cultures and skills and passions. And everything goes better when we bring them all to the table and have all of those different perspectives going on at once.
Yeah, that's great. And what things do you do to stay healthy in a high-paced, high-pressure, very busy environment?
That is such a thing. It is such a thing. It's a discipline, honestly, especially living in New York City, where a lot of people, it drives a lot of people crazy. I was grateful to kind of understand that before I moved to New York City. So I kind of said, okay, Taylor, what do we need to do to make sure, and so what I've learned is, for me, this is what works is exercise, therapy, time management, stress management. Between work and law school, I refuse to have a stress level. That's just not healthy for my mind or my body. So I manage stress, make time for family and friends and giving back. And something that's really close to my heart is staying young. Like, of course, stay focused and responsible and grow in wisdom and perspective, but stay, imaginative and positive and laugh when getting mad isn't productive. It's sports. We're not curing cancer. Let's work hard. Let's have fun with it. Because at the end of the day, it's a game and it's a ball and we love it. So that's, I think, how I kind of maintain perspective and stay healthy, or, try my very best to stay healthy. Grateful to be as healthy as I am.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, your energy level is intoxicating, if you get around. I don't know where you get it.
This is where I get it.
Where it is. I'm just sitting there going, okay. And it feeds into my next question. It's like, you've worked full-time, undergrad, graduate school. Now you're in law school. How? I mean, how did you manage all of that? And it seems like with the way you've engaged in players and working with the MLS, it seems seamless, all of it in some capacity. So
honestly, I think looking at it from that perspective, I just feel like immense gratitude for all that I've been able to do. And then in terms of doing all these things at the same time, I don't know whether to thank or blame my parents. But maybe one day I'll do one thing at one time. No, that's never going to happen. But time management is the name of the game. And my calendar on my phone is like a rainbow of work meetings and classes and work events and school events. And then there's gym time, and don't forget to call mom, and drinks with friends. And sometimes I schedule a nap when it's just like, no, we need a nap. We need to make time for this today. Okay. And it sounds like I'm a crazy person just scheduling my day. But for me, if I don't, like, time slips away if I'm not diligent. And if I'm someone who wants to do it all, I got to find a way to do it all. And that's one way that works for me. That keeps my stress down. But I do know people who, like, that would increase their stress level. So it's a matter of knowing thyself.
No, absolutely. I'm panicking as you're discussing.
Oh, no. Deep breaths, Brian.
I know, it's funny because I've gone down the same journey. I mean, back in the day, school, work, the whole nine at the same time, had kids. And it took a toll, though. I do know that. And I don't know if I was diligent enough or had scheduled enough me time. And that's where my fault lies, if you will. So, and that's where all this gray beard hair came from. Prematurely. So I haven't been aging well. And I know you were saying keeping young is key. So hopefully, people will be listening. It's got to be. Yeah, it's like people should be listening to your message and really latching onto it, because it's important to understand that even though it seems, like you said, crazy to schedule all these things, it's vital or it will pass you by. And I think that's important. So I'm curious, though, why law school? What's the end game here?
End game. Is there one?
If there one. I mean, I'm sensing a PhD once you're done with it.
Oh, gosh. When I started law school, I remember I said, first day of school ever. My mom said, this is what, the third time you've said that? So we'll see.
Right.
No, for law school, I wish I had like a succinct answer, but basically what's really important to me in life, many things. So one thing is very important to me in life is to be representation for people who look like me, for women of color who are interested in, the sports industry or higher education or whatever it might be, but be like, nope, it's led by people who don't look like me. Maybe that's not my place. So I want to be that person that shows them and tells them and reminds them and encourages them that this is their place, that any place that they want to be and are willing to work to be is their place. So I'm thinking that, to me, This is March 23rd, 2021. I'm thinking for me, that looks like one day being an executive at a sports organization.
Okay.
So what I did then was I looked around at the credentials of executives at different sports organizations. You mentioned, Brian, that I started out at Major League Soccer as the executive assistant to the deputy commissioner and the executive vice president of communications. Yeah. And as I looked around the commissioner's office, I was going, okay, he has a JD, he has an MBA, she has a JD, he has an MBA, he has a JD, I have an MBA. What can I do to make sure that I, who, as a woman of color, I could argue that the rules might be different for me, could make sure that I get one of those seats someday at some organization.
Yeah.
I essentially want to make it so that they can't say no. They can't deny that I'm the best person for whatever opportunity that I'm vying for, that I will have the credentials and the background, the experience and the skills and all of that. And plus on top of that, I've always thought I'd be a good lawyer. I don't know if you've noticed, but I enjoy talking. And law school also seemed like a fun challenge. And I now stand corrected. Challenge, yes. Fun, no. But when the opportunity arose to both work in sports business and go to school at Fordham Law's evening division, I told myself, I'm going to do it if finances work out. And I had people around me who were like, no, Taylor, you can't do it. It's too hard. It's too much. It's whatever. And I don't know what it is, but something in me was like, well, that makes me want to do it more. I want to show you.
It's your competitiveness too. It's that.
I guess. Maybe I need to reel this in a little bit. But by the grace of God herself, it did work out financially. So here I am doing it. And it's not easy, but it is doable and it is rewarding. And I'm so grateful to be able to do it.
That's fantastic. I would imagine, were you an athlete growing up? Because your competitiveness is intense. So
oh, no. That's going to be
derived from.
Maybe that's an adjective to add to the list of.
Maybe.
Oh gosh, I played volleyball and track in high school. I actually played soccer all growing up till I had back surgery and couldn't play anymore. But I chose to work in sport in college instead of play sport in college.
Okay. No, I get that. And it sounds like you've been doing a lot of environmental scanning in the environment everywhere you've been to determine where do I need to be, what are others doing, and how can I beat them at their own game. So I'm impressed. It's awesome to see.
I'm not trying to beat anyone at anyone's game. I'm trying to bring everybody with me. We can all win.
Fair enough. At the end of the day, right? We all stand on the shoulders of giants at some capacity, I guess. So, but no, that's fantastic. I really like it. Do you have a sport in mind that you would want to wind up in eventually? Is it MLS or is it something else possibly?
Well, what's funny is I grew up playing soccer. I watched Galaxy games. I grew up in Southern California, but I never really dove into soccer culture, whether globally or domestically. But since I got this opportunity at Major League Soccer, I fell in love with the game. And I'm just so grateful that I did end up in soccer because it's the global game. Mm-hmm. And with my love of, travel and cultural literacy and globalization and sport for development, what better sport is there than soccer? So I don't ever see myself leaving the sport of soccer or football, whatever people want to call it.
I love it. No, that's fantastic. Good. So outside of that, we have a student that is joining us today. Gabby, welcome to the program.
Hey, Gabby.
Thank you.
So Gabby has a question for you today, Taylor.
Yeah, Taylor, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. I know I personally have learned a lot from what you've shared, and the way you've shared it is just like a different way of looking at it. So I appreciate that from you. So first off, I have a question. I would argue that the gap in popularity between and viewership between MLS and the women's national soccer team is the smallest among professional programs in the U.S. How do you continue? How does your organization continue to build on this relationship and continue this?
Thanks for asking, Gabby. And that's very important to me and to many of my colleagues and leaders at my organization as well, is the support for women's sport. And it's not only men supporting women, but it's just also these are elite, fantastic World Cup winning athletes in the U.S. women's national team. And we bow down to those queens. We want to fully support them because after all, between MLS, National Women's Soccer League, U.S. Soccer Federation, which has the U.S. men's national team, U.S. women's national team, we all want to grow the game of soccer in North America. And in fact, that's part of the big reason why MLS was established in 1996, was to grow soccer in the United States and Canada. And so we are so lucky and grateful to be able to work alongside some amazing winning women in the sport that we all love.
Yeah, definitely awesome. That's something I'm really passionate about. The sport of soccer I'm really proud of is like the women's organizations are able to like hold up us to such a high standard that the men are kind of like, okay, like we're up next. So that's really cool to hear. And then lastly, I'd love to hear if you could step into the shoes of the UF Sport Management Department or the UF community in general, what would you have asked that we didn't?
I think, asking myself a question. What do I want to answer? No. I think one thing that's important, that would have been important for me coming in as an entry-level employee, I'm just a step up of entry-level myself right now, but is the importance of leading from wherever one is. And I think that's a huge professional development skill that everybody can learn. So like, in addition to soccer, I'm a big NBA fan. And one of my favorite awards is Sixth Man of the Year. And that's because I've always believed that anyone can lead, even from the bench. So again, I'm a young professional and I still consider myself a leader on my team. And that for me garners respect, it garners opportunity, it garners relationships. And you know what, this might be silly, but I tell myself I'm not an executive yet, but I will be one day. So I might as well start acting like it now, get those reps in. And I'm endlessly grateful that my boss, Dr. Northcutt, does encourage that leadership development in my colleague and me. So I guess another lesson in that is work with people, work with good people.
Thanks so much. Iron sharpens iron, right?
Always.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gabby, for chiming in.
Thanks,
Perfect.
Gabby.
So in addition to, some of the hardline questions we've asked, we also like to have a little fun on Voices from the Field, Taylor. So we've got this rapid fire Q&A session that we do. It's 1 minute in time, and it's some lighthearted questions. And Shelly, you want to go from there?
Yeah. Yep. 1 minute. If there's any question that comes up that you want to pass, feel free to pass. We'll keep moving. We're just going to see how many you can get and learn a little bit of some fun facts about you. So,
all right.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Here. Oops. Okay. First job.
Internship at the Clippers.
What was the worst haircut you've ever had?
2019. It was too short. Bad.
Favorite time of the day?
Sunset.
When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a writer, and that is still in the works.
Name 2 daily habits.
Coffee and practicing piano.
Okay. Favorite sport to play?
To play would still be volleyball.
Netflix, Prime Video, or cable?
Netflix.
If I looked up your most played songs, what song or artist would I see?
Right now, you'd see a lot of Pop Smoke.
Okay. Favorite zoo animal?
Lions, and I'm still not over Mufasa's death.
What phone app do you waste the most time on?
I'll say Instagram because TikTok makes me feel old.
What makes you laugh the most?
TikTok.
Mountains or beaches?
Beaches.
All right, that's time. Thanks so much for joining us in that 1 minute. It's great to hear. It makes me want to ask, what your haircut look like?
No, you don't want to ask.
And what book you're writing, because I imagine you have a book right after law school. Maybe there's a book in the works.
In all of my spare time. Maybe one day soon. But in the meantime, MLS season kicks off in 24 days from today. I don't know when this airs, but 24 days from today.
No, fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So you said you practice piano on top of it. I don't know where you find the time or the energy. You've got to.
I'm not good. I'm not good. It's just fun. It's my quarantine hobby. Sometimes it's the other side of my brain. It just needs some exercise sometimes.
I think more of us need to exercise those different parts of our brain more frequently. So.
Well, I mean, we're just staying at home, not doing a whole lot.
No. I respect the energy, like I said previously. So it was amazing to have you on. I really appreciate the enthusiasm and your response to questions. Some of the way you categorize things and just articulate stuff was unique and interesting, and I think can be very helpful to our students. So I really appreciate the insight and the feedback that you had. It's awesome to hear what the MLS is doing in regards to player engagement, and obviously it's a page that other organizations should look into. I love the relational aspects of it, and obviously this is a new and emerging field, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities, I think, for students in the future. So it's great to hear what you were doing. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, no, definitely. So with that said, Taylor, thank you for joining us and taking time to share your professional endeavors. I'm certain that the University of Florida Department of Sport Management students, our faculty, and our alumni appreciate and value your thoughts in regards to the subject matter today. So with that said, please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at UFSPM. We are your hosts, Brian Avery.
And Shelley Lyle.
And
Go Gators.
Go Gators. There we go. Thank you, Taylor.